If you're thinking about taking your CeMAP exam and you want to know what it's like on the day, what does exam day feel like? Well, that is what we're going to be covering in this video. We're going to talk to somebody who's going to share their experience about going through CeMAP and taking the exams on the day, all of the information, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We're going to do it right now. Aaron, you've just recently, or very recently, passed CeMAP and now are an advisor. Today, what I want to talk about is what was it actually like on the day taking those exams, because you know it's 3 exams all in all. Just explain and talk me through the ups and downs and the anxieties and everything that kind of went with it.
Yeah, it's tough. It is really tough. And I actually tried to do my CMAP one without Charlotte from Future and Finance. And I think I did it twice. And I got to the point where I was just thinking, I really don't know if I can do this, because it is really hard when you're sat in there and you have to almost like try and remember this great big book full of nonsense that feels like. And I at the time I was working for a well-known building society and thought, well, I should know all this information, but you do simply just sit in there and think, oh my gosh, I can't remember anything. And some of the questions are a little bit overwhelming how they're worded. But a really great technique that Charlotte had taught me, but also a few people that I'd spoken to about my exams from the company that I was working with, was to just sit there, familiarise yourself with the environment that you're in, take a few deep breaths, like read through like the practice sort of questions. They're nothing to do with CMAP. They're more like getting you used to what you need to click. But once I'd done that, that's what calmed me down and made me realise like I actually can do this and I have got some oxygen in my brain to be able to go forward and do it. Because of the first couple of times that I did it, I think you just go into panic mode naturally, especially when it's something you really want to do and you're passionate about using your CMAP and going into a CMAP sort of regulated role. I knew that that's where I wanted to go. So I was like, well, I have to pass these exams. I've got to pass this exam. And then when you come out, and unfortunately I failed the first couple, and it's really, really tough to mentally get over that. But you just have to keep going. And I would say the main thing that I think got me through was just taking that bit of time before, and just for really familiarise yourself with your setting. So I did mine in an exam centre. It was about 25 minutes from home. It wasn't my most local, but it was the easier one to get to, rather than having to go into a city centre. And I knew where I needed to park, so that always helped. Always make sure you've got a bit of a plan beforehand if you are travelling. Give yourself plenty of time, because you don't want to be stressed about that as well. But when you're in there, everything has to be dead silent, which I thought was really creepy. But obviously it has to be done. But yeah, just believe in yourself a little bit as well, because my God, it is really like your brain will trick you into thinking you know nothing. But you just have to re-trick your brain into remembering the stuff.
There's so many points I'd love to dive into them more. So how did you you say you failed? I actually, I failed my first as well, my first time when I've said before, I didn't do CMAP, I did CII, but it's the same equivalent. And I remember failing. And to make matters worse, at the time, I did mine through Connell's, and my dad was head of training. He was the director of training, and like wrote the training material, put you through the CMAPs and all that type of stuff. So when I failed, that was like the biggest L on my face. Like it was the worst. Like I remember feeling it, and I remember feeling awful. And kind of questioning whether or not it was for me. I don't know. How did you say you failed a couple of times, and I usually meet most people do fail, because it's tough. How did you, you say you kind of, that feeling when you left, how did you go, I am going to do it again? Like, how did you find the motivation, the discipline to kind of get back on the horse?
I knew I wanted to be in a regulated role,
Yeah.
and I needed my CMAP to do that. There was no other option really. And don't get me wrong, I had the wobbles where I thought, I don't know if maybe regulated is the right thing for me. If I can't pass these exams, then what on earth am I doing? But I think as long as you're doing it for the right reasons, and you've got that determination and that drive in you, that you know that you're doing it for those right reasons, then you can. And there's loads of different resources out there. Like I say, I used Charlotte from Future and
Mm.
Finance, and she was amazing with her. So I passed my CeMAP 1 with her e-learning materials. Um, and that's, like I said, what got me over the line in the end, because I just wasn't able to soak it in myself, because you do get this huge white book, um, and a lot of it you don't really use, and it was just really good for someone to be able to break it down for me to understand, and I think that almost helped me probably feel more motivated to go again, because when you look at this great big book, you think you have to remember every single unit in there, and that's really overwhelming. But when someone breaks it down to you and says, actually, you don't need to know all of this, but you need to remember these things to pass, um, that was obviously really, really helpful. But I think if you're doing it for the right reasons, and you know why you're doing it, and you know what you're working towards, whether that's in the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, however far away that might be, um, that's what kept me going.
You said you did it in the test center. Could you talk me through that? Because what was that like? How you say you find the parking space? Could you just talk me through, just for the people watching this, because everyone will be feeling this. There's the option of online, which has blown my mind how online even works. Like that was not even a thing when I did it. But could you just talk us through, the getting there, the preparing, the going in, the waiting, the doing the exam, after the exam? Kind of could you just walk us through what that's like?
Yeah, so like I said, I live like mid Leicestershire really, but I'm very much in between Leicestershire, Derbyshire, and Nottinghamshire.
Hmm.
So I actually chose to go to the Derby Centre because it was much easier to get to than trying to drive into Leicester City Centre. So as much as you might think that I'm just going to go for the closest one, do also think about where you're going to get convenient parking or is most convenient for you to get to. I think it was like an extra 5 minutes for me to get to Derby, but it was so much more easier of a drive for me to get to. And they had off-road parking, so just make sure as well that you know where you're parking, because that's not something you want to be thinking about on the day, or if you're getting the train or the bus or anything, make sure you really plan that in advance, because you these are just little things that you just don't want to be thinking about on the day when you've got an exam ahead of you. And then when you get there, they a lot of the test centres that you go to, they'll do tests for everything. So a couple of my tests, I was like sat in between a load of like middle-aged men doing like their um, like lorry driver licenses and things like this, and I was just like, oh, what are you all doing here? So yeah, there's not that many people that will be probably doing their CMAP alongside you. Um, and then so you have to take a form of ID with you as well. So passport, driving license, anything like that. And they'll take that from you. They'll ask you to confirm your address, so make sure you've got the right address on there as well. Because I'd moved house, I hadn't changed my address in the first one, so that was awkward. They'll then take a picture of you as well normally, which I think just says on their system that they've met you. But once you've done that the first time, you don't have to do it again, luckily. Um, and then you do have to wait around for them to call you in, which is quite nerve wracking. They'll get you to read like the rules and things like that. Um, a lot of the time, I only waited probably 5 or 10 minutes, because they're quite good at allocating your slot and pulling you in around about your slot time. The test centre that I was at in particular, you sort of go around a corner. Again, they check your ID, they check that you are who you say you are. When you're in a test centre, you get a whiteboard and a couple, well, I think it's maybe a couple of whiteboards, and a pen that you can scribble notes on, things like that. Um, you get given that and you get told which number to go to, and you're in basically. But that's where I would then say you just really need to sort of get comfortable, find a position that suits you, and then go through the questions, no matter how many times you do it, go through those questions, because that for me was my opportunity to sit and breathe and have that minute. Because when you're in the waiting room, that's completely different to when you're actually sat in and doing your exam. You're in there now, this is real. So for me, it was like I could be as cool as a cucumber in there. As soon as I get into that like room, I'm like sat there like shaking. I'm like, oh my god, what do I need to remember? So yeah, just take that time when you're in there.
And then what happens once you finish? So you do, because Charlotte was saying about how some people did it in 17 minutes and then they leave, and she was like, and then they obviously fail. She said they fail. Then she said it's not like a. She was like, but you know, but like what from your perspective. So you do the exam. What happens then?
So I definitely did not do it in 17 minutes.
I didn't either, by the way. No chance.
So yeah, you do it, and then you have to make sure that you finish it correctly as well. You have to like come out of it correctly, and they'll always make sure that you do as well, because obviously they want to make sure they get the results to you. The test centre that I used, you had to sit, turn around, put your hand up, and then they'd wave you out. So it wasn't just that like anyone could sort of get up and walk out. They'd have to sort of tell you, because I guess it was probably to stop like 5 people at once getting up and walking out, causing probably a little bit of a disruption. And then so for CeMAP 1 and 2, you go out, you get a piece of paper. When I first tried to do my CeMAP a few years ago, you used to get your results there and then. So I like didn't open this piece of paper, and I was like, oh, I'll open it in the car when I'm on my own. But now they don't do that. They email you your results instead.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is stressful.
How long what's the gap? How long does that take from when they?
So for CMAP 1 and 2, it's normally around about an hour. So, and it's the most stressful hour of your life.
Yeah.
Waiting for that email to come through. But you'll also get an email to say that your results are ready to view, but that doesn't always mean that they're then loaded into. So I did mine through LibFA or LIBF, whatever you want to call it.
London Institute of Banking and Finance, isn't it? Yeah.
If we're going to be formal about it. And yeah, sometimes like you'd get that email and then they wouldn't load into like LIBF for like another hour. So do just be really conscious of that, that just wait for LIBF to upload them. And then it just tells you in there what your results were. So whether you pass and then what you got, pass, merit, distinction and your scores, or a fail and then your score. But on CMAP 3, you actually find out, you do get a piece of paper there and then. And be aware of that, because I thought it was just a normal piece of paper. Got all the way home, I thought I'll just check the website, and then it told me my result on there, and I was like,
on the
"Oh my
paper
gosh!"
or on the website? Oh yeah, on the. So you could have opened it straight away.
Yeah, yeah. So 1 and 2, you do get your results via sort of email and on LIBF. And 3, you get them.
That's such a strange thing. That's so weird. But that's the type of stuff that you're on here to talk about, because there's so many weird things that people don't know about, that I think catch people out. What else would you say, parting words on this one? Anything else you'd add on this when it comes to the day of CeMAP?
Just be organised. Just don't think. So like I said, I was about a 25-minute drive away, and I'd always leave an hour because of traffic. I had to go on the M1, and I always just thought, gosh, if there's an accident, I get rerouted or anything. If there's traffic anywhere, I know for some people, like being sort of 20 minutes early to somewhere is ridiculous.
It's great,
But
and I love that. That's my type of. I do that to anything. I think that's a good idea.
I just think it just takes that stress away from you thinking like, oh well, I'm stuck like 10 minutes away and I've only got 5 minutes till my exam starts.
Yeah.
You want to be in the centre 10 minutes minimum before you start anyway, because a couple of times I even got called in at like 5 to my time, because if they've got slots available for you, they'll get you in. So yeah, just be organised and be early is what
Now, if you wanted some tips on how to pass your CeMAP exam first time, then check out this video here where I sat down with Charlotte Hemingway from Future in Finance. And we talk about the tips and tricks that you can pass CeMAP 1 in your first attempt.